Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Kalayim, Pedig Tes, Halacha Hey, and Halacha Vav. We are learning today Daf Pei Gimel. This is the second to last Daf in the Masechta. We are beginning on Daf Pei Beis, Amid Beis, all the way in the bottom, last line by the new Mishnah by Halacha Hey. We are dedicating today's class L'Refuah Shalema to Aiden Gittel Bas Eliza Kreindel. May we all hear good news today. Amen. Now, the topic of today's shir is extremely important, and there are many different ways of learning our Mishnah. And let me share the following. First of all, the word shatnez is a composite of three words: shua, tavui, and nuz. Shua, according to almost all of the Rishonim, is the first step process that's done to fibers to turn them into threads, and that is either shua means to smooth, as we'll see, or it means to comb. These are steps that have to be done to fibers prior to spinning them. Tavui means to spin. That's the process of spinning the raw fibers into threads. And nuz either means weaving the threads into a material, or nuz means taking a single fiber, a single thread, and twisting or twining them. Just as an example, if you look at your tzitzis, you'll see that every strand is really it's a twist of two, and each one of the two have in them four. Actually, every single one of our strands of tzitzis has in it 8 sub-strands. But it's not 8 into 1, it's 4 into 1, 4 into 1, and those two were twined together into one. So this is a process that's done, again, either to the thread, or it's a process that's done by simply weaving different threads into a material. Now, both in Bavli, both in Yavamis and in Nida, the Yavamis is Daf Samach Aleph. Rashi over there writes that Midah, this is all based on this Mishnah and how you are to understand this Mishnah, that the Isur Midah of Shatnes is only if all of these 3 steps were performed together, wool and linen. In other words, if someone didn't smooth the wool and the linen together and spin them together and twist them together, if someone has what we think about, you have woolen threads, you have linen threads, and then you combine them in a garment, according to Rashi, that is only Asur Mid'Rabbanan. God forbid, we're not minimizing Isuri D'Rabbanan, but we just want to clarify what is the Isur D'Oraisa. Again, according to Rashi, only if you do Shua and the Tavui and the Nuz together. Together means, again, you take the raw wool and the raw fibers that will turn into linen, and you begin everything together. You smooth them together, and then you spin them together, and then you twist them together. Then you make a garment. Then you have the Isur of Shatnez. According to the Rabbeinu Tam, absolutely not. The Rabbeinu Tam is on the other side of this argument, that even if all of these 3 steps were done individually, you prepared the wool individually, all of the 3 steps, you prepared the linen individually, and then you went ahead, what we have in mind, and you make a garment from woolen threads and linen threads, you violated the Isur D'Oraisa of Shatnez. That is the sheet of the Rabbeinu Tam. The Rambam, as we will see, sides with the Rabbeinu Tam. If any one is done to the threads, any one is done to the threads. That means if you have a thread that was only smooth, it was not spun yet, and you have a linen thread that was only smooth, and you combine them together, you already are violating Shatnez Midoiraisa. The Rambam has a very stringent opinion over here. In other words, not either you have to do all the 3 together, or the threads have to have all these 3 steps, and then you combine them together. Or no, the Torah, by using the word shatnez, is telling you that if you have a thread that underwent any step of these 3, and then you combine wool and linen, then you are violating midoiraisa, then you're violating the Isur of Shatnez. And as we will see, that there are different ways of learning our Mishnah. We're going to follow one approach, we're going to learn the way the Gra learned this Mishnah. And actually, he understands that this question of whether you have to do these 3 steps together for there to be an Isur Doiraisa, or even if you did not do these 3 steps together, still, if you now make a garment with wool and linen, you're violating a biblical violation of Shatnes, is really the Machlokes Tanoim that we will have in our Mishnah. That will be the whole halacha, hey, including the Gemara. And if we'll have...
Quick question. If the wool and linen are separated, I know you mentioned this, have a border, they can still be on the same, let's say, clothing?
What
like
do you mean?
Like this. These are 3 different fabrics, and they all have borders. Can someone use this?
So let me say like this: if I think I know what you're asking, I know Ito asked this last week.
Right.
In Halacha Vav, we're going to have various cases in the Mishnah, and that will include a case that you're mentioning, that you have a belt, leather. On one end you have wool, on one end you have linen. That is to make the belt longer. We're going to see whether it's a problem to use that belt, whether it's problematic to use this belt midrabanan only if when you close the belt, you're tying the wool and the linen together or not. All of this will be discussed in Halacha Vav. There's going to be many scenarios. If we'll have enough time, we're going to begin learning about what does it mean to make a garment? What does it mean to stitch 2 begadim together? Now, midrabanan, everyone agrees, if you have 2 complete separate garments, it was not shua together, not tavui together, not nus together, not woven, 2 different garments, and you stitch them together, minimally you're violating an isur midrabanan. Machlokes, whether it's doiraisa or derabanan. How do you define stitching together? So if you know by stitching, there is a single stitch movement. A single stitch movement means that when you put the thread in, the thread now is on the needle is on the other side. That's a single stitch. Not in and out, just in or just out. A double stitch movement is, if you ever made a hem, is 1 in and 1 out. 1 in and 1 out means that the same side where the thread originally came into, and that's where the thread now is there, on the same side. Makes a huge difference. If you ever made a hem, if you only do 1 stitch, it will come apart very easy. Once you do a double stitch, the meaning of a double stitch, as many people call it a single stitch, it means the movement in and the movement out. That, as we'll see, is the minimum amount of stitching of a garment together to render them kalayim, whether it's doiraisa or derabanan. But once we're going to get into that, we'll see how far we get. It's not only concerning kalayim, but how do you define a stitch? It's also going to get dinei tuma and tara, because if I have 2 different garments and one of them had contact with tuma, the other one won't necessarily become tamei, because it goes down a notch. But if it's 1 garment, the 1 garment becomes tamei. How do you define 1 garment? Also, hilchas Shabbos. Hilchas Shabbos, we're not allowed to tear, obviously for constructive purposes. But tearing will be something that was properly sewed together. If a garment was only with a 1 stitch connected before Shabbos, as we'll see, separating on Shabbos won't even be an Isur D'Rabbanan. You're not doing anything. It was never considered connected for you to say, now you are disconnecting it, and we'll leave it at that. And Chavra, let's dive right away inside. Again, there are many ways of learning this Mishnah. There's a Machlokes Tanoim in the Mishnah. It's very cryptic, and we're going to follow the Mishnah the way the Rambam learns it, and that's the way the Gra explains this Mishnah. It says the Mishnah, Ein Asur Mishum Kalayim Elo. Now, he skips the word Shua, and he says Tavui. Tavui is, like we mentioned, it's the spinning, and Va'arig. According to most, Arig is nuz. Arig is weaving together. In other words, in order for there to be an Isur D'Oraisa, you have to spin. We're going to now add the words or weave 2 fibers into a garment. We're going to learn our Mishnah or. That will be the key. Either or. Okay. Now, Shenamar. Now we're going, quoting the word that the Torah uses for the prohibition of shatnes, kilei begadim. It says, loisilba shatnes. What type of word is shatnes? Shatnes is not a word. Shatnes is a combination of the following 3 words. Davar shuhu shua. Shua, we're going to say, means the smoothing process or the combing process. Tavui means something that was spun. before you spin, people have felts. If you're in the garment business, felts, they take the fibers and they smooth them, they stamp on them, and somehow the fibers intertwine with each other. But that's called a felt. Tavi means the proper, you make threads. The process of spinning. You can watch all of this on YouTube today. And nuz means to weave together. And look inside. Let's go to Pnei Moshe. That it's really a noitrikain. It's a Rashi Tevis. It's not a Rashi Tevis. It's a composite because it's three different words together. That im tarfan lahatsemeru pishtam. The hechlik oisam. If they were smooth, that's the meaning of the word shua. Where do we find it? Which means ish chalak, something smooth. Vitargumai by ish chalak, right? We're speaking about Yaakov Avinu, Gever She'iyah, that's where you see the word Shua, means to smooth. In other words, according to the way the Pnei Moshe is learning the Tanakama, even if you only do one of the three, that means you only smooth them out together. How are they combined? They're not even threads. If you did the smoothing process together, hasto shatnas. Or, that's tavoy oi. See the Pnei Moshe? Oi shetava mehen chut, have a chibur. In other words, if you spun threads together, that means you smooth them individually. Now that you spin, I want to make something clear. When you spin threads together, because Vlad asked the question, did I say or in the first line of the Mishnah Arik? Even if you have a thread that's spun wool and linen, there is no isur to wear threads. The word thread is not a beged. So it's only because of you making it into a beged that you're violating wearing a beged of shatnez. That's why the Mishnah wrote, the way we're learning the Mishnah, tavoy ve'arik. But when I said or, I'm reading the Pnei Moshe now, ve'arik oi, that means even if you didn't smooth them together. You did not spin them together. Narvas, we always thought you have threads of wool, you have other threads of linen, and now you weave a garment together. You weave them together. First days, we'll leave it at that. According to the Tanakhama, you violated Shatnes mida oiraisam. Either or. However, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, and as we'll see in the Gemara, as the Gemara will learn, that Rav Shimon ben Elazar is arguing with that, and he says that nolois umelis hu es aviv shebashamayim. That Shatnes comes from one root. Nolois umelis means distance oneself. It's a lashon of distancing. That shatnes, and I'll just give you one of the reasons. People have a taiva when they're hungry to eat. So if a person, God forbid, succumbs and they eat non-kosher food, of course they became distant. But they had a taiva, they had a yetzer hara. There was no yetzer hara to wear shatnes. You have a taiva to wear shatnes. So keep it. What do you care? So doing that, if God forbid, it's going to uniquely distance a person. That's called nullis amazes, a person away from the Father in heaven. Okay, now we're not done yet. Now the Mishnah says, examples, halavadim is a felt, asurim ipnei shehein shu'in. They are prohibited if they were only smooth together. Now, if we're going to learn, which we're going to learn, that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar holds that you have to do all of the three steps, the Tanakhama holds either or. Regardless which shita you will hold, if you only did one of the three steps together, minimally it's going to be asur midrabbanan. No, it's even if you're going to hold, you have to do all the three to violate. It's not that we're saying that if you only smooth them together, you're good to go. That's the marafuld over here. Halavadim, look inside the marafuld, 4 or 5 lines from the top. That tzemer taruf. Tzemer taruf means a felt of wool, meaning beloy tvia, ve'ariga. And you made out of it a baguette. Sollst du wissen sein, that ve'im taraf tzemer o pishtem yachad, ve'asum em beged, it's going to be asum midirabana. Everything. That's why I mentioned before that even though we're having a discussion whether you have to do all the 3 steps to violate doiraisa or only the rabbanon, l'kula alma, if it's it has to be some type of beged. So felt, people make felt garments, people make felt begadim. Before you make it into a beged, even if you're going to hold that just doing that together is also doiraisa, you're not going to violate anything. The Torah doesn't say don't wear material. The Torah says don't wear a beged. And yeah, what you think about I think about a talus as a material, but not a felt. That's why he has to add that they would make felts into materials. If they did that, it's going to be also according to minimally it's going to be also midrabanan. Now he's going to give an example of a pif. A pif is a rope. It's a rope that only has tavui. It's a thick rope. They didn't have to smooth it that much, but they twined it together. They twirled. Pif shal tzamer v'shal pishten is going to be asur. Here again. Now, we just said before, a rope is not a beged. So what do you mean? What's the beged part of it? So again, the Marafulda explains that that there were times that people would connect these ropes at the hem. They would make it into a hem. If you have a beged made out of, I don't care, synthetic, polyester, plastic. So it was something that was made to strengthen the garment. It was attached to the garment. It's called a pif. So he's saying, v'ima beged shel tzemer, also lasis pif shel pishtan. That's the way he's learning. Weiter. Why? Because they resemble something that was woven together. Really, they were not woven together. It's not woven together. All you had is tavui. All you had is a tavui. So even though you don't have a proper weave, it was hung onto the garment. That's what he was saying before. Nevertheless, since it's tavuid, since there was some twining together over here, it's also going to be yasa. And even if you're going to hold that you have to have all the 3 steps to create an isur d'oraisa, it's going to be yasa midrabanan. Now, weiter.
It's not that you're combining the 2 together in the picture. That the baguette is one of the 2, and you're using this.
There has to be some sort of twining. How did you attach it? Either you wove it, and if you didn't weave it, there's some sort of tavui, there's some connection. So even though it was not woven, that's what we're saying, that type of way that you connected this rope as a hem to the beged, which is like spinning together, so you only spun together, it's also going to be asur. Did I say the Rabbanan machlekes tanoim? Let's go weiter. Rabbi Yossi Yomer, Meshichai shel arig, a purple belts that are made out of a purple wool, which was a common type of belt. They're not allowed to be worn over a beged that's made out of linen. Remember we just learned in the last year, even Rab Ze'ed allowed it. So the Mishnah explains, no, this is different. The Gemara is going to mamash verbalize it. Because these types of purple belts were not like the belt we spoke about on the last year, that you have a garment and you want to keep it tight. So you just put a belt over it, a belt that's not connected at all to the garment, like the gartel that we have. No, these were actually somehow connected to the garment, as we'll see. Now, does that mean, I'm just wondering myself, today we have in our pants, we have these loops. I don't know. That's a good shaila. I don't know.
A loop is not sewn to
a loop is not sewn. The question is, will it be?
No, but there is like these small pockets that go.
The loop, but don't forget the logic that we learned last week is that if you cannot remove one without the other, then you got yourself a problem midrabanan. That's why I'm not so convinced, even by a loop, that it's okay. Because I cannot remove, if I have a, I can't pull my pants down and leave the belt up. That's a problem. Okay. Next thing is, I'm sorry, I said halacha vav and halacha hey. Let's go next case. Let's go weiter. Now,
But either way, this would seem to answer Kevan's question in the beginning.
I know.
That it's sewn together, or Ito's question from last year.
No. Next case. Lo yikshar seret shal tzemer b'shal pishtan lachir b'yis hamasna. Now we're talking about like this. Afa pisha retzua be'emtza. That's the case. You have a retzua is leather. You have a leather belt, and I had a lot of cholent, and the leather belt was good when I was at 12. Now I don't have leather. So what I want to do is I attach to one edge of the belt, I attach the chut shal tzemer. At the other edge, linen. That's Ito's case. The wool and the linen are b'chlal not touching each other, but they now make the same beged. So the Mishnah says you're not allowed to do it. But why are you not allowed to do it? Machloikis rishonim. The Rambam says you're not allowed to do it because they are part of the same garment. Isur midrabanan. The other rishonim, the Rash says no. Lo yikshar means it's only prohibited is because when you tie the belt, you're going to tie the wool and the linen, which on the front end, which means according to the Rash, one of the main rishonim in the Mishnah that's interpreting the Mishnah, if they won't be tied together, then it won't even be Yasser Midrabanan. According to the Rambam, he didn't learn the Mishnah that because you're tying them together, because they are part of the same garment. The Ramah says, Paskins, that we can understand the Mishnah the way the Rash, not the way the Rambam understands it. Ilakula. How great is that?
So do we now consider it belt?
So is the issue for touching or to coexist? I don't understand.
Machlekes rishonim. According to the Rambam, is that they coexist. According to the Rash, is that they're touching. Vlad, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
If just talked about a rope, if we do it on opposite ends of the rope, a rope isn't a beged.
Very good. So the rope only becomes a beged when you wear it as a belt. 100%. I'm going back. A belt is a beged. A gartel is a beged. Very good. Bidiyuk. And by the way, you can own shatnez midoraisa. You just can't wear it. We're speaking about wearing. And like, look, the Pnei Moshe learns like the Rash. Pnei Moshe is the third line under the Gemara, under everything. So he says like this. That lo yikshirim shal pishtan lachger boyes masnav afal pishar shor oil beemtza v'gedil shal tzemer meroisha ha'echad. You get it? Mamash lo yikshirim v'gedil shal pishtan meroisha ha'sheni aser. Why? Shahareke shechoiger boy, because when you girdle the belt, koisher Russian shal tzemer v'shal pishtan zebozeh, because they're touching together in the knot in the front. Again, the Rambam doesn't learn that way, and the Ramah says that we can be makel not like the Rambam.
Okay, so now we have an understanding.
I know, we just needed to learn more. Now, the final then will be that oisos hagarden or v'oisos hakoifsim, whether you are a weaver, weavers. So just like many times, I would go with my own threads, and I would go to a weaver to make a garment. Or you have a garment and you go to a launderer to launder the garment. And these professionals did not want to mix one with the others. So they would sew on either a label with the name of the owner, or they would, with thread, they would sew in the Rashi Tevus of the name of the owner into the garment. They should remember which one belongs to whom. So the question is, if the garment is made out of wool and the thread that they used for an ois, in camp we do it, and then they come back with other people's clothing, our kids, amazing. But here, ois is a garden, so he says that asuras mishum kalayim. Asuras mishum kalayim, again, going with, you only violate kalayim if you do all of the three steps together. Nevertheless, even that opinion will be minded that it's asur midrabanan. Now, this is the easiest thing to resolve. When you have shatnez in a beged, just remove it. Here, most people removed it anyways. I don't think people would bring the stuff back from the dry cleaners and they would leave their name sewed into it. But you should be mindful of it, because could be they had extra fibers of linen. They had it. And they're putting and you gave them a garment of wool. So like when you pick up your clothing, then make sure you take out those fibers or find out what it is. And if not, it's for sure going to be asur midrabanan. Okay, this is, the whole flow of the Mishnah whichever Rishon you're going to approach is going to have underneath it the question, is the noitrikon of shatnois, shua, tavui, and noise, meaning that unless you have all three together, it's asur midrabanan, or even any one of the three will already make it asur doiraisa. And the whole Mishnah will fit, because whenever the Mishnah says asur, it's asur. The only question is it asur doiraisa, asur derabanan? Okay. Now,
but also as long as they're not touching each other.
And if they're not even touching each other,
it seems it's not even asur derabanan, so to speak. So if we go back to the shoe,
according to the Rambam, it is. The Rambam is very machmer.
So, but the case of the shoe that we learned what he was mamish being machmer, but the sewing of the linen is on the outside of the shoe.
No. The reason why he
the
was
wool's
machmer
on the
is because
inside.
he was afraid, Rab Ze'eda, that the thread will go through the wool lining. He was afraid that it will happen. People don't know what I know one thing. Every time my kapata loses a button, every time I can buy a brand new kapata, when I sew on the button, I shouldn't do that. I lose the pocket always, because the button is on top of the inside pocket, and I go through the pocket. You have to when you sew, you can stick the needle in wherever you want. No one had that experience here. It's so funny. It happens every time. It's so frustrating. All right, let's go. The Mishnah gave examples of one without the other. That was the whole flow of the Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to want to know, why did the Mishnah have to give all these examples? Why couldn't the Mishnah only give you one example of, again, there's shua, tavui, and nuz. Shua would mean the first case of the Mishnah, where you took the raw materials and you trample on it, you smooth it out. You have to watch it on YouTube. They comb it, they make it smoother. And if you do them together, the Mishnah says it's already awesome. So why we would know on our own that if only shua makes a problem, so then only tavui makes a problem. Only nuz will make a problem. That's the whole daf. And the Gemara says it's not true. Every step is different. And if the Mishnah would have only said one, I wouldn't have known the other. The Mishnah has to specify each one of the three. That's the whole flow. Frek the Gemara, nitni shua, that's the girsa we're going to read. Let the Mishnah only give the case of shua. If eloi nitna tavui, okay. Again, we're learning pshat. This is important. That the Tanakama, it's either or, Vlad. So why do we have to have all of that? So answers the Gemara, returning to that Pei Gimel Amud Beis, that ilu tanin on shua, if the Mishnah only would have given an example of you combining wool and linen only through this first step of the smoothing process, and the Mishnah would not have given another example where you tavui them together. Tavui was the rope case. Somehow it's called tavui mendel. Then hava minin. I would have said that maybe, yeah, only shua together is a problem, but only tavui together is mutter. Mutter means not midoraisa, not midrabanan. In other words, the Mishnah, the Gemara is not explaining why. The Gemara is just making a fact that in the process of making fibers and a garment, you have different steps in the procedure, and every step is different. You can make an argument saying that this is the main step, or that's the main step, or vis-a-vis a beged, this is the main step, or that's the main step, vis-a-vis the isur of shatnez. The Gemara doesn't even spend the effort of explaining why each one is different, but each step is so different that knowing one that would not mean you would know the other. But tavui together is not mutter. It's either asur midrabanan or it's asur doiraisa. So the Mishnah needed to say it, and therefore masnisa lo yamar kain elo, that in asur mishum kalayim. What's the first line? Elu tavi ve'arik. That was the first opening from the Mishnah. First line is that even if they were not shua together, they would only tavui together. Like I mentioned, the Mishnah has to say arig, because if you only have a thread, you can wear a thread. Thread is not a garment. Thread is not a garment. There has to be some beged aspect. So the arig is just to make the isur of tavui be relevant for big day, for big day kalai, for big day shatnez, big day kalai, kila bigod. But it's not the arig part. And then weiter, I litna shuav lenitna nuz. So again, the Mishnah says that ilu taninan shuav letaninan luz havamrinan hal luz mutter. That if the only thing that was done together, they were both combed separate, they were both spun separate, and only woven together, maybe it would be mutter. Woven together. So I take back what I said. The case of piv is the woven. Here we go. Ela piv shall tzemeh b'shal pishtan aser. Very good. So I don't know why he said that they were twined. They were not twined together. Very good. So you made a mistake over here. You know, we learned good. Mendel, you said good. You have a beged of wool. You have a pith only of linen. And the connecting it together, like as a hem, is called woven together. That's all you had. And that's awesome. Nitne nuz and nitne shua, same thing. No, you would not know one from the other. Ilotanin nuz, v'leitanin shua, havamninon, that if only shua, it would be mutter. And therefore, masnisan leyamra came. And that was the first example the Mishnah gave is that halavadim asurim b'pnei shem shuim. Very clear. Okay. And I just wanted to read the Likud Mishnah Seliyo to find it again, because he was the one that learned this pshat that we were saying in the Mishnah. And if you want to go back just to read it. It's good to read what he says, because there's so many different ways of learning the Mishnah. If you want to go back to the beginning of today's daf, I want to read it inside. And daf Pei Beis, Amid Beis, all the way in the bottom, not the Biur Hagra, but Likud Mishnah Seliyo, the second to last line. Right after we explained the Tanakama the way he explained it, that Vlad, it's either or, either. Either or the other, the other. However, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, that's the way he's teaching. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar palik al zeh, and Vesfira lei, he's the one that holds the bein and kol hagimel beyachad. That's the point. In other words, he makes what everyone quotes Machloikas Rashi Rabbeinu Tam. The way he learned the Mishnah, that's the Machloikas Tanoim. So Rashi, Rabbeinu Tama, each one paskening like another Tana. And that really helps a lot of issues that people have in the Sugya of Kalayim. Now, let's go back to the Gemara. The Mishnah said, Meshichai shel Orig Asurais. And the kasha is, why can't you have a wool belt over a linen pants? When we learned yesterday, we learned in the last year, even Abze'ed allowed you to do it. We spoke about it because it was not connected. Is Tanai, Tani Mutaris. Actually, there was a Tana that spoke about these belts. It was a common staple that had the purple belt. Find me one chassid that wears a purple belt. In karate, oh, very good. The Abze'ed said, I'm pay base, it's mutter. So the Gemara says, yeah, of course. Man, the Amar Asurais, which is the version we have in our Mishnah, is Kegoin Ilain Karsaya. Tarsai means they were woven to who machapas bay. In other words, the belt is attached to the garment. Whether it's a loop, I don't think they had loops then. Since it's attached, that's why it's asur. Either midorais or midrabanan. Mandam motarais was, now we're quoting the same words we learned on daf pei beis on the base. To who shenetz garmei. Only the straps keeps it up. Only when it's tight is the belt functioning. And therefore, vihi nochasolo, you can remove the belt, you can lower the belt, you can or remove the garment even without removing the belt. They're not woven together, they're not tied together, and therefore in such a scenario, yes, you can put wool over linen, and it's not even asan midrabanan. Let's go move on. I'm happy we're up there. So now we're beginning with the next Mishnah. So really we're going to be addressing three different halachis: shatnez, tumantara, and Shabbos. Shatnez, we're not allowed to connect two garments together, wool and linen, even if it's only going to be asar midrabanan, right? According to Rab Shimon ben Elazar, he holds you have to have all three together. Okay, but nevertheless, everyone agrees that it's going to be at least asar midrabanan. So how do you define connecting two garments together? They're woven together. So we're beginning to speak about a stitch. And again, a single stitch means only the in or only the out movement. A single stitch will also be defined in a way where the thread begins in one side, and after you did the stitch, the thread is in the other side. In and out would mean that after you finish that movement, you are on the same side that you began. Says the Mishnah. If you only made one stitch, either in or out, halachically, it's not called a chibur, guys. The word chibur is not a word for kalayim. The word chibur is a word that's used always when you get to tumah and tara. So very simple. So there's a source of tumah, and it can impart tumah to a beged. All right? Let's say there's something that's an av, and it has contact with a beged. An av can be metama, not only oichel mamashkim, but adam and kalim. Metama the keli. But what level does the keli become? A rishain. The Rishon can only be metama oichlin or mashkin. This beged, even if it has contact with another beged, it won't impart tuma. It's too far away from the source. What happens if you have two garments and one stitch connected them together? And now an av hatuma touched to one of the garments. So the Mishnah says it's not a chibur. The other garment will not become tamei because it's only a single stitch. And similarly, the ein ba mishum kalayim. Now we're coming to our topic. It's not kalayim. We said that at least midrabanan it should be asur. It's not asur because it's not considered a connection. It's all consistent, at least. And it doesn't always work that way, Chevra. Many times we know that not everything is traveling on the same track. Here it is. And finally, v'hashem to b'Shabbos, undoing stitching. And let me just add again, undoing stitching for it to be an isur d'oraisa is only if the kavana, if the intent was in order for the person to resew. Right, because mekalkel b'Shabbos, aside of the exceptions, is a pater. But no, I'm unstitching a garment to resew it better. But what I am undoing is only one stitch. The whole thing was only one stitch. So you're pater. Just want to point out that pater means pater al rasa, which means that midrabanan it's considered a chibur. And I don't know what to tell you when it comes to tum and tara, whether it's tamim midrabanan, but by kalayim, the way I understand it, ain't by mishum kalayim at all, not even midrabanan. We just came off a Mishnah where the Mishnah keeps on saying asur, 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 and everyone, all of the noise kalim, let's go even with the gra that this is Rav Shimon ben Elazar, that it's asur midrabanan. So maybe it doesn't fully travel on the same track. That's what just came to my mind right now. Ain't a chibur.
Only talking about taking it off part. It doesn't mean that it's a chibur because you're taking it off.
No. I didn't take it. No. I mean, say before I took it off, if something tamei touched one, will the other one become tamei midrabanan? I don't know. I know the word pater. The Mishnah of Hashem to b'Shabbos is not muter. Muter lishmei b'Shabbos. Okay. However, if you made a double stitch, how do you define a double stitch in halacha? This is the beautiful words. Asa shnei roishah b'tzad echad. That's the way you define it. Shnei roishah means that after you did that movement, both sides of the thread are on the same side. Because you went in and you went out. Now, all three. Sai, it's called a chibur for tum and tara. Sai veyesh va mishum kalayim. And the Hashem to b'Shabbos you be chayiv chatas. However, who argues? Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that for two things to be considered combined, it's not enough in and out. You have to have a third. You have to have a third stitch back in. Rabbi Yehuda Omer achet t'shalesh. And just to say that we have these chazals that speak about chut ha-meshulish loy b'meheri yinotek. Right, so if you have a family and you have the grandfather and you have the son and the grandson, they learn Torah. So then the Chazal tell us that Torah will always come back to that family because chut ha-meshulish. There's something there, and you have the concept of chazaka. Whether it's connected here or not, I don't know. But this is a fascinating machlokes.
Even unless you do the three, you can cut it on Shabbat still, or is he just walking?
Rabbi Yehuda holds, even the Tanna Kama holds that even if there's only one midrabanan, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. See, Shabbos seems to be more chomer than everything else. But, but for biblical, they're both biblically on the same track. Connection is either two, or connection is...
Oh, I'm sorry, if you have a label on a jacket on Shabbos, you can take it off if it's a single.
Why would you take a label on Shabbos?
If it's embarrassing and visible to the public.
Now, let me tell you the problem with the label. Labels on Shabbos is the issue of carrying when there's no Eruv. That's another whole topic. Like we have many things on our garments that are not really needed vis-a-vis for the purpose of you wearing the garment, like the extra spare button that they sew on the bottom of many shirts. Not the ones you pay $2 for, the ones you pay $800 for, that's the same thing. The expensive shirts. So you look, you'll see a couple of buttons. Do you need those buttons? And what about the labels we have in our jackets? Do you need those labels? And why are we allowed to wear them on Shabbos? Because they become part of the beged. But are they part of the beged? I think that's another whole topic. But if for them to be part of the beged, let's go for them to be part of the beged, then they have to be connected to the beged. So what's the pshat connected? That's the same question over here. I can say one thing that B'didi have a uvda. By a hem, if you don't go at least 3, the hem will not even last me for 24 hours. Like I understand Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to garments. You ever tried that? Go in and out. And not nothing. It just a matter, it'll last you for an hour or two, and one time you're on the way, it's going to come out. In a dry mall. Okay, I think we'll stop over here because the next topic is a big topic. I know we didn't finish the Mishnah yet, so God willing, we're going to conclude tomorrow with the last line in the Mishnah. And Ezras Hashem, we will be making this see.
Rabbi, we appreciate the extra 4 minutes.
Here we go. Guys,
Yes.
Speaker is over here, and everyone is invited to come to shul to make a l'chaim.
And by the way, the single stitch that Kayvon was showing a picture of is not a single stitch according to what we're learning, because that's really a double stitch.
Very good. That's called a double stitch. Very important.
Got
Single stitch means just the
Thanks for the